So now that we are in 2026, one of the things I'm excited for this year for ARC is the 5 TLCs we'll be getting for ARC Ascended. Those 5 being the Araneo, Giga, Queztal, therizinosaurus, and the Megalosaurus. So in today's video, I'll be talking about what I would do if I was the one in charge of bringing these creatures some extra life. So without further ado, let's talk about the first creature that won the vote and the one that I'm the most excited for, that being the Araneo. So, for the Araneo, I had many different concept ideas what this spider could do. One of them is that the Araneo could have been a cave creature meant to just climb out walls or jump onto them, or it could have maybe evolved in a way of a mini version of the Broodmother, being able to summon smaller Araneos to aid it in battle. But what I decided to do is make this creature more of a utility caving creature. But before we talk some of the newer abilities I gave the Araneo, let's talk about some quality of life changes this creature could have with some of its current abilities. So for starters, since this is, well, a spider, the Araneo needs to climb on walls. I mean, come on, it's a spider. It should have been able to climb on the walls in the first place. And I still don't forgive ARC not giving the Araneo to climb on walls sooner. Next is its net ability. Currently, it's okay being able to slow creatures, helping either taming or catching up with a creature or player getting away. But it's really not a great ability. So what I think should be changed is turn this into a bola. Being able to bola creatures you can normally hit with a bola and be able to apply a really heavy slow onto larger creatures. The last thing before we add a few newer abilities is the Areneo's Bite. I think it should have a toggle that it can switch between Torpidity and Venom. I think its Torpidity Bite should be a lot stronger. It could potentially make the Araneo a new knockout tame, and the Venom toggle will make the Araneo deal more damage over time, while also being able to reduce damage the target deals by 10%. Now for some of the newer abilities, I think the Araneo should be able to passively produce silk in its inventory, or at least being able to create its own type of organic silk. This will be helpful for players who play on scorched earth or any desert maps on the arcs, plus it'll be useful for its two other abilities. First, it will be able to have a grapple ability only being able to use on ceilings or roof. This allows the Araneo to grab a player or smaller tames, wiping them and applying the venomous bite onto them. This ability can also be set into trap mode. The main catch though about this ability is that the Araneo will need at least 100 silk to be able to perform this ability. The last ability I have for the Araneo is its silk zip line ability, firing a silk line, making it work similar to the zip line, making it useful for maps such as Aberration. This ability will also use silk, and I would say about 75 silk will be needed for this ability to work. Overall, my idea for the Araneo TLC is to make it more of a utility tame. Something that you probably wouldn't want 100% use for combat situations, but is mainly good for exploring and helping a bit of taming, whatever that be, knocking out creatures or being able to slow or bola them. Now let's move on to the second creature that won the TLC vote, that being the Quetzal. The Quetzal is one of the other creatures I really wanted to win this TLC vote, and I'm glad it did, for the Quetzal doesn't have really much use in today's arc. Sure, it's gotten that one little movement speed buff increase a while ago, but it's not really good enough to make this creature more useful. So the first thing I would do for this creature is change how its position is. And no, I'm not just talking about a model update, since all of these creatures will be receiving one, but the Quetzal in ARC is probably going to be the most confusing Quetzal of all time. Take a look at this image of the Quetzal. Pretty good, right? Now look at the dossier of the Quetzal in ARC. It's pretty solid design. Now look at the Quetzal in game. My man's got back problems after all the grind he was trying to do to get gold in Marvel Rivals. Now, I do understand the reason why the Quetzal isn't standing up like it normally is, and that's because of the platform saddle. However, I do think they should have the Quetzal be upward instead of being leaning down when it gets its TLC, and if this affects the Quetzal having a platform saddle, I think this is honestly a fair trade-off. But let's move on to the actual abilities the Quetzal could receive. First, having a pickup ability with its beak. I think for how large a Quetzal is, it should be able to have a secondary option to pick up creatures with its beak, similar to how the Argentavis does, but with way more larger tames. And I think the beak should be able to pick up something as large as a parasaur. Now this ability also has another variation where you could eat a creature while it's in the Quetzal mouth, if it's at 200 HP or less, which will instantly kill the creature and give the Quetzal a buff. This buff will increase the movement speed of the Quetzal and reduce sprinting stamina cost by 50% for 30 seconds. This will just help the Quetzal move around the map more since it is the slowest flyer in the game. This would help the Quetzal move around the map a bit more, for it's one of the slowest flyers in the game. The next ability I would give the Quetzal is a dive bomb attack. Something that isn't too new to arcs, with flyers such as the Griffin or Snow Owl having those abilities, some with different effects. So what would the Quetzal do differently? Damage! I want this ability to deal massive damage, like it's the sky version of the woolly rhino. Because imagine just getting impaled by the Quetzal's beak. I would imagine that thing would really hurt. The last thing that I think would be cool for the Quetzal to have is an industrial saddle. Now, as I mentioned earlier about how the Quetzal is positioned, that this could affect it having a platform saddle. So for a possible compensation for that, why not give it an industrial saddle? This saddle could give some extra armor and add the ability to drop explosives underneath, making the Quetzal more of a sky bombing creature. I think overall I want the Quetzal to be more of an aggressive creature and be more of a threat in the sky rather than what it is currently. The Giga. A creature that I think everyone knew was going to be one of the winners for this TLC vote, and it's for good reason. While the Giga isn't a horrible creature per se compared to some of the ones on here, it has been severely affected by power creep these last few years. Especially with the card chart being added, nearly replacing the Giga, for it pretty much does everything a Giga would want for a TLC. Getting stronger with every kill, farming meat and hide well, being a way better creature to use for things such as orbital supply drops, and so much more. So with the Giga getting a TLC, I think we should rework its range mechanic. While back in the day this mechanic made sense for the Giga was the strongest creature you could tame, so it having something that has a drawback made pretty much sense. However, these days where creatures have busted abilities, it just doesn't make sense for the Giga to have this huge of a drawback. So let's rework it, shall we? Since I do think the idea of having a creature go into a rage mode, but with a catch, is a neat idea. So with the new idea, the Giga is going to be able to deal more damage based on its missing HP. I am thinking the Giga will deal an increase of 0.5 damage per 1% missing of its max HP. This will just give the Giga more raw damage, and it's just a start to its rage mechanic. Once the Giga reaches 30% max HP or lower, it enters into its rage mode. During this, the Giga's damage is increased by 75% and attack speed increased by 25%, making it demolish all creatures in its path for 1 minute. But like I said, there is a catch to this, for once the duration ends, the Giga will enter to a fatigue state, reducing its damage by 10% and increases stamina cost by 25% for 2 minutes. I think this is a fair trade-off. It doesn't affect it where you have your own tame killing your other tames. Plus, there is a way for players to keep this rage buff going, and that is by attacking creatures. As long as the survivor keeps biting on other creatures, it will refresh its duration. This could help the Giga be more useful in things such as orbital supply drops, or potentially be the best runner for orbital supply drops. Now let's move on to the Giga's new attack. This would be how the Giga will be able to apply its gash effects, and it will be kind of similar how the Carno applies its bleed, being an alternate attack. This would be a slower attack than the Giga's basic bite attack, but would deal a lot more damage. This could also be how the Giga will be able to harvest a lot more hide or pelt, and will also get a 50% weight reduction to those two resources. Now let's talk about the Giga's roar. It's just a standard roar with no effect, but let's change that. One of the things I do like in Arc is that I like the idea of having different effects based on if a creature is a carnivore or herbivore. Take for example, the dragon dealing less damage to herbivores, or the Ceratosaurus only being able to heal carnivores. So what the Giga could affect both. My idea is the Giga's roar will make herbivores take more damage, about 25%, and carnivorous creatures will deal less damage, about 10%. This will make the Giga even more of a threat to larger herbivores such as the Dreadnoughtus and the Brachy once that gets added to the game. It will give the Giga a better chance to fight against the Karchar for the damage debuff. But we could go a bit further with this ability. Why not tie it with the Giga's rage mechanic? Maybe while enraged, the duration and effectiveness could be increased even more. Now finally, I think we give the Giga a stomp attack. damaging and knocking back tames. This may seem simple, but for how large the Giga is and how bad its turning radius can be, this could make it where small creatures that is ankle biting the Giga can be swatted away like a fly. This ability can also be tied with the Giga's range mechanic, dealing more damage and playing way more knockback. Overall, I think this concept I have for the Giga gives us more usage and could help the Giga reclaim its spot as Ark's apex predator. Oh boy, the therizinosaur. And I know a few people are come after me, but I really don't think this creature needed a TLC. Like, yeah, its model is outdated and needs an update, but you know what else needs a model update? Nearly half of Ark's creatures. I just don't like hearing people saying they mostly voted this creature just for its outdated model, while the therizinosaur is a pretty good creature overall. Good for fighting a dragon, a decent fighter overall, an amazing gatherer, and has a really cool, unique level up mechanic. So, for what I would do for the therizinosaur TLC, well, to be honest, I'm going to take the laser route for this, since I personally don't think the therizinosaur needs any ability changes. I think it's really fine as it already is, and say that if they wanted to do a TLC for this creature, they should just kind of do what the Paleo Arc team did for their therizinosaur DLC. Just add a few extra things such as a small weight reduction to wood, a unique attack combo, an ability to sharpen its claws, and a few other smaller things. This is definitely a way more sortish section of this video, but overall, the therizinosaur is a fine creature. I don't think it really needs that many changes, and I am a bit worried that when this thing gets its TLC, it could affect what we currently have, which is a really good solid creature. Finally, the Megalosaurus, which is a very interesting creature indeed. Being a creature that is focused on being a nighttime hunter and a heavy sleeper in the day, while being the go-to boss runner for the Aberration map, and that's just kind of what it has going for it. I do like the idea of a nighttime hunter because that's a really cool concept to go off. I just think the Megalosaurus just has been executed poorly for this, especially since with the recent Moses being added shows how better the Megalosaurus could be. So for starters, we can get rid of the whole daytime debuff. It just doesn't make sense for the Megalosaurus to have something completely nerfed, and while I don't think the buff that it already gives is good enough for this debuff. Next, we're going to do a small change to its grab attack, making it scale with its melee. It's just something small, but I always thought it was strange. It never scaled with its melee at all. Just kind of weird, to be honest. Next is a nighttime buff, and I'm not going to change what it does, but just add a few things to it. While the buff is active, the Megalosaurus will be slightly harder to be detected by other creatures. This would make sense if the Megalosaurus is going to be the nighttime predator. It should be more sneaky or be able to catch its prey more off guard. The other thing is that this nighttime buff should also be able to be applied when the Megalosaurus is in caves. It just drives me crazy that the Megalosaurus can be affected by the daytime debuff in the cave if it's daytime, but no matter what time it is on Aberration, it's fine. It just never made sense to me. Plus, the Megalosaurus can be found in caves, so it shouldn't be affected by the debuff at all. Now for the Megalosaurus' roar, it gets somewhat stay as a cosmetic roar unless it's nighttime. This is when the Megalosaurus will be able to apply a fear roar to creatures up to a Carno size. Lastly, I want to add something to do with the Megalosaurus based on its sleeping. And why not add an interesting sleeping mechanic to it? You can open the Megalosaurus' radius wheel and put the Megalosaurus to sleep for at least, let's just say, 5 minutes. The Megalosaurus will receive the energized buff. This buff will last for a good duration, maybe like 10 minutes we could say, and it will cause the Megalosaurus to gain extra movement speed and have a stamina drain reduction. This will just help the Megalosaurus be able to move around the map or even help it more in the caves. Overall, the Megalosaurus should be a good creature to use at night and also a great creature for any caving adventure. So those are my TLC concepts for the upcoming TLCs we'll be getting in Arc of this year. And what do you think? Do you like some of the concept ideas I have for these creatures or no? Let me know down in the comments below what creature you're excited to get the TLC. Me personally, I think it's got to be the Araneo, but I'm definitely curious to see what they do with the Megalosaurus. But that's a wrap today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, hit that like button to the channel. Hitting that subscribe button will always be appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out, and have a good one.